The Caro Kann is a very popular opening from the black side, and it's a personal favorite of mine, so I thought I'd explore some of the cool traps that exist in this opening, and some of these traps are gonna blow your mind. Let's get into the first trap, which begins with e4, and now the move c6, and now c4, which looks a little odd, but it's a very common idea and opening choice from white, and if you play the Caro a lot, you're probably going to see it. And here's a nice way to punish it. So you start with d5, they take, you take, and one of the ideas with c4 is to open up these diagonals quickly for white. So very often, white's just going to pile up on these diagonals. So bishop check, and then queen to a4, getting the queen involved. Here you can take. Now white will probably regain the pawn with something like this, but now the end position is that materially you're equal, but the queen's in the center, and the queen in the center is indeed a target. So you continue with knight to c5, and already the queen in the center is a little uncomfortable. So something like queen to c4, let's assume, is played. You continue with knight to d3 check, and I mean, if the king moves, there's these forking ideas. If the king goes to f1, then and f1 is probably the better option for the king, but if it goes to f1, I mean, you can continue here very comfortably. The king is definitely not going to be safe on f1. So very often, king to e2 is played, just pressuring the knight. But here, you have a very nice move, rook to c8, ignoring the knight. But after queen takes, king takes, rook takes, we get to a very funny position where it might not seem all that impressive, but the rook here on c1 is stopping these four pieces in a really funny way. If you just look at the position, there's no way for white to reasonably develop any of these pieces, right? They cannot move their knights because they'll lose the according rook. Of course, if you get your king over here, then they can move away with check, but aside from that, if you simply develop your pieces in any way you want, I mean, you could even just move your king to a8 and then move it back. You have all the time in the world because ultimately, again, they're totally stuck. I mean, this is just such a beautiful position here. I mean, I'd love to be black here. It's such a rare situation where your rook infiltrates to an extent that it totally dominates all of white's pieces, and they basically are left with pawns to move. Let's continue. This trap again is from the black pieces. There's going to be also some from the white perspective, but here we get to this line where white doesn't play d4 and instead plays knight to c3. Now here, after f3, supporting the center, we continue with d4. And if the knight moves to a4, because, you know, if you're looking at this from white's perspective, it's a little sad to retreat. You're just blocking all your pieces. It seems like you want to go put your knight somewhere useful, like knight to a4. But the issue with this move is that now e6, a very slow-looking move, but importantly, it covers c5. And so, essentially, with very rare exceptions, whatever white does, you continue with b5. And the knight is trapped. And on move, as early as move 5, with the move b5, you can win the knight. And also, I guess I should add, is kind of funny that you've only moved pawns so far, and you're winning the knight. So again, very fun idea to employ. Now I'm going to move away from the black's perspective and look at a trap that you can do with the white pieces. This is, of course, one of the most classic traps in chess, but I have to mention it in a video about Caro Kann traps. So it starts with the typical Caro Kann structure with e4 and d4 for white and c6 and d5 for black. And now knight to c3, pawn takes, knight takes, bishop to f5, queen to e2 to defend, and after knight to d7 comes the move knight to d6 check. There's different variations where this can appear, but the smothered mate checkmate is among the most common in the Caro Kann, and it's very beautiful indeed, and you win super quickly. And now I want to show you guys one of my favorite traps. It's just so beautiful. It's really, really nice. Let's look at it. So e4, c6, d4, d5, black takes, and now plays the move knight f6. Now, white can also retreat their knight. Very common is the take, and you get this sort of structure here that I very much enjoy playing with the black pieces. You maneuver your knight over to g6 after placing your rook on e8. I mean, it's a very nice structure, but white can also instead decide to go to g3. And here, one of the ideas separate from the trap, actually, just another idea that you should be aware of in the Caro Kann is in these lines where they move the knight to g3, you can throw away your pawn on the h-file to them. So just go h5 followed by h6, h4, and you can even get to h3 in some cases and just really mess up their king side structure. So that's an idea you should be aware of. And in this case, after h5, they can play bishop g5, and again h4. They take, you take, and what have you done here? Well, you've successfully managed to open up your rook on h8. And why is that important? Well, because after they save their bishop here with bishop to e5, you play rook takes h2. If they want to save their rook, they have to take. But now, a beautiful idea. Queen to a5 check. Whatever they do, suppose c3, queen takes e5. And the idea is after pawn takes h2, there's no way to stop this promotion. If the knight moves away, then black's going to promote on h1. If the knight doesn't move, then black's going to promote on g1 and also take some extra material. And I mean, you can stare at this position for 10 minutes if you'd like. There's nothing white can do. It's basically time to resign. You're going to be down a lot of material from white's perspective. So a really beautiful idea exploiting this pawn on h5 and the rook that will be opened up once you launch your pawn to h5, h4, and h3. Now we're going to end the video with another trap from the white's perspective, and the trap here, you might know the idea, you might have seen kind of the end position of the trap, but you might have not known that it originated from a Caro Kann structure. And so let's look at it. So e4, c6, d4, d5, and the normal position we basically reached, but now queen to d3 is played. And the reason that white kind of plays queen to d3 is because their idea is to castle queenside. And so e5, pawn takes, let's say the queen does not want to trade, and now bishop to d2, and castles long. And black seems really dominating here. I mean, heck, they could even just take a free knight in the center of the board. But if they do, queen to d8, wow. After king takes, bishop to g5, double check, and you see the power of the discovery here. King to e1 gets checkmated with rook sliding over to d8, and king to c7. You might think that black's surviving, but now bishop to d8, cutting off this escape route on b6. It's game over. So hopefully you guys learned a couple of nice ideas from both sides in the Caro Kann from this video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I will see you next time. Peace out.